At 6 a.m. on Monday, April 24, 2017, two local residents were driving near a soccer complex. As they passed by, they noticed something unusual lying in the parking lot. Initially, the woman and her daughter couldn't quite make out what it was from the car. Curiosity got the best of them, and they pulled over to investigate. What they found was shocking. It was the lifeless body of a person. After overcoming their initial shock, they quickly dialed 911. By 7 a.m., the police had arrived at the scene. They discovered the body of a young woman, lying lifeless in the gravel of the parking lot. The atmosphere was heavy, and it appeared that she had been there for some time with a pool of blood surrounding her. Prior to this tragic discovery, security cameras had captured the last moments of 20-year-old Haley Rathgaber. She had been seen getting into a car with a man. However, that same man was later seen returning alone that night. With no signs of struggle, investigators speculated that Haley may not have resisted her attacker. Yet, crucial questions remained. Was the man seen on the security footage responsible for her death? Her body was found lying in a position akin to making a snow angel, with the fatal gunshot wound being the only visible injury. Interestingly, the only other clue found at the scene was a blood-stained blue towel near her body. Despite combing the area thoroughly, no weapon or shell casings were discovered. The scene was a mess, littered with debris and trash, making the search for useful evidence difficult. Even more puzzling was the absence of any personal belongings, no wallet, phone, or keys. It was as though all traces of her identity had been erased. Thankfully, detectives were able to find one vital clue, a tattoo of a cross on her back adorned with a Bible verse. Recognizing this as a possible means of identification, they turned to the media for help. The rarity of violent crime in the area meant that news of the incident spread rapidly, leaving the community both shocked and fearful. In times like this, media coverage can be instrumental. Simply reporting that a body has been found might prompt families to check in on loved ones sooner than they otherwise would. One such concerned resident was Heather Collins, who lived in Evansville, Indiana, just 15 miles from where the body had been discovered. The authorities were treating the death as suspicious, sparking a full investigation. With the victim believed to be between 19 and 20 years old, Heather's concerns for her daughters grew. Fortunately, her younger daughters were found safe and sound, but her eldest daughter, Haley, was nowhere to be found. Haley's failure to answer calls and texts was entirely out of character, heightening the family's worry. Haley was known for being prompt in her responses, and the silence was alarming. Frantic, Heather and her other daughters began reaching out to Haley's friends, hoping to get any clue about her whereabouts. Their anxiety skyrocketed when they learned that Haley had missed an important exam at her university. As a dedicated nursing student in her second year, skipping class was something she would never do. Desperate for answers, Heather contacted a close friend and co-worker of Haley's, asking if she had any news. She also requested her to check on her on Haley's apartment. When she arrived, she noticed Haley's car parked outside, but the apartment door was unlocked. Despite this, there was no sign of Haley inside. Growing more anxious by the minute, Heather reached out to a detective friend from the police department, explaining the situation and seeking help. Shortly after, she was asked to provide photos of Haley's tattoos. Tragically, the worst fears came true. Detectives confirmed that the body found near the soccer complex was indeed Haley, using her tattoos to identify her. Haley Rathgaber was born on December 3, 1996, and lived an extraordinary life during her 20 years. Known for her maturity and natural caregiving instincts, she took on a maternal role among her friends. One friend recalled how she stood out not only because of her height, but also for her caring nature. It was no surprise when she chose a career in nursing at the University of Southern Indiana, aligning with her desire to help others. Haley was also incredibly self-sufficient. In high school, she worked at Donut Bank in Newburgh, and during college, she took a job at Texas Roadhouse, a local restaurant, to support herself financially. But work was more than just an income source. It was where she built a close-knit group of friends, many of whom she had known since high school. This tight group, known as the Radies, spent a lot of time together celebrating birthdays and creating cherished memories. However, it was possible that someone from Haley's trusted circle might have harmed her. For her family, there was one person in particular who raised concerns. Haley's mother revealed to detectives that her daughter had recently been in a tense situation with one of her friends, a revelation that surprised investigators. Haley was the godmother to 10-month-old Jackson, the son of her longtime friend Jordan Hughes. Haley adored being a godmother, relishing the opportunity to spend time with a baby without having to raise one herself. With Jackson's father out of the picture and Jordan working hard to support her family, the baby was often cared for by Jordan's boyfriend. He took on the role of father figure and was also a friend of Haley's and other members of their group. However, just days before Haley's murder, on April 10, 2017, a tragic accident occurred. While Jordan's boyfriend had Jackson in a car seat, he reportedly tripped over a diaper bag, causing the baby to fall down the stairs at their apartment. Jackson was rushed to the hospital and was in critical condition. Upon hearing the news, Haley and her friends hurried to the hospital to support Jordan. They brought her food and comforted her during the difficult time. Later, they returned to Haley's home to grab clean clothes, but something unusual caught their attention. As soon as they entered, they noticed the diaper bag sitting beside the couch, contradicting Jordan's boyfriend's claim that it had caused him to trip and fall down the stairs. This discovery led the group to suspect that the man might have been hiding something. While many still embraced him, they couldn't shake their growing distrust, particularly because of his bad reputation in town and previous run-ins with the law. The tragic incident with Jackson only intensified their suspicions. Sadly, Jackson did not survive the fall, passing away after 2 days in intensive care. During police questioning, Jordan's boyfriend's inconsistent version of events raised further doubts, especially since Jackson's injuries didn't align with the type of fall that he had described. Haley was torn about what to do. She debated whether to share her suspicions with the police. She had even mentioned to friends that if the police wanted to talk to her, she would be willing. In fact, the police had spoken to her just days before her murder. If she had revealed or was about to reveal something that could implicate Jordan's boyfriend, it would have provided a strong motive for him to harm her. There were additional circumstances that heightened suspicion surrounding him. When detectives interviewed Haley's co-workers at the restaurant, they learned that on Sunday, April 23, 2017, after finishing her shift, Haley had been invited out for drinks with friends but declined. Instead, she planned to go to the library with a friend. However, those plans changed when she decided to visit Jordan to pick up her wallet. At the time, Jordan was at his boyfriend's brother's house. This location became the last known place where Haley was before her body was found. These events triggered alarm bells for both Haley's mother and the detectives. With such serious charges looming over Jordan's boyfriend, whose name was Thaddeus Rice, he had both the motive and the opportunity to commit the crime. Adding to the suspicion, the day after Haley's tragic death, her mother received a Snapchat video showing Rice brandishing a firearm. The disturbing footage intensified concerns about his potential involvement. Social media also buzzed with rumors implicating Rice in Haley's murder. With all these incriminating pieces falling into place, investigators were closing in on Thaddeus Rice and knew it was time to question him. However, when interrogated, Rice invoked his right to remain silent and requested legal representation, deepening suspicions about his involvement. His refusal to cooperate only made the detectives more wary. Jordan provided an alibi for Rice, stating that both of them had spent the night at Rice's brother's house, but the detectives weren't convinced they were any closer to making an arrest. With little physical evidence to go on, Haley's family was left grieving as they began the painful process of preparing for her funeral. Heather couldn't shake the anxiety that the person who killed her daughter might even show up at the candlelight vigil being held in her honor. However, the vigil also gave investigators a chance to observe everyone in attendance, hoping to catch any suspicious behavior. Despite these efforts, the case seemed to be stalling. Then, a call came in from one of Haley's closest friends, another member of the Radies. He recounted his activities from the night of April 23rd, explaining that after work, he spent time with another coworker. Later, he received a text from Haley, asking him to come by her apartment. After a brief visit, Haley asked him to drop her off at Newburgh Docks, a local landmark just a few miles from the soccer field where her body was later found. Concerned but not wanting to pry, he obliged and left without questioning her further. He tried to reach her by text that night but received no response. This information gave detectives a clearer timeline of Haley's movements the night of her murder. They turned their focus to another friend, Jack, who lived near the Newburgh Docks. Jack added that Haley had planned to meet someone that evening. Despite searching Jack's home, investigators found no evidence linking him to the crime. Surveillance footage from a nearby Walmart also corroborated both men's alibi, leaving detectives without sufficient evidence to move forward. As the investigation grew more complex, the police discovered another potential lead. A Texas Roadhouse employee had reportedly dropped off blood-stained clothing at a local dry cleaner. Investigators immediately began looking into who this person was and whether they could be connected to the case. The clothing in question belonged to James Wetson, a cook at the restaurant. When detectives questioned James, who usually kept to himself at work, he provided a straightforward explanation for the blood, stating that he had cut himself earlier that week. Detectives then took DNA swabs from James and sent them, along with the clothing, to the lab. Unfortunately for the detectives, the results brought no new leads. The clothing only contained James's DNA, confirming his story and clearing him as a suspect. With the third suspect eliminated, investigators continued to focus on the remaining two suspects, even enlisting help from the FBI. Then, an unexpected twist changed everything. Nearly a week after Haley's murder on April 29, 2017, the FBI made a significant breakthrough. While Haley's cell phone remained missing, they had managed to retrieve her call records. Investigators were eager to know about her last phone activity, so they began tracking the phone's location to create a rough timeline. Their next step was to figure out who Haley had been communicating with. The call logs revealed a startling discovery. Haley had been in contact with Isaiah Hagen. This revelation prompted detectives to pull Isaiah's phone records as well, and what they uncovered was shocking. Isaiah's movements mirrored Haley's. According to the phone activity, Isaiah met with Haley at her apartment around 10:30 p.m. on April 23, 2017. Together, they traveled east of Evansville, arriving at the soccer field around 11 p.m. This directly contradicted Isaiah's previous statement to the police, where he claimed to have dropped Haley off at a different location. Haley's phone went offline at the soccer complex around 11:25 p.m., Around the same time, Isaiah's phone also left the area. Interestingly, Haley's phone briefly reappeared near southwest Evansville at around 3 a.m., but shut off again after 20 minutes, never to be turned on again. With conflicting stories, detectives turned to surveillance footage from Haley's apartment. The footage showed Haley getting into a car with Isaiah, but when he returned in the early morning to check Haley's car, he was alone. But detectives had more than just location data and surveillance footage to aid their investigation. Typically, text messages aren't fully available. Only a record of them being sent remains. However, in this case, they were able to retrieve the actual contents of the messages, and Isaiah's texts were damning. It turned out that Isaiah had a history of bouncing checks, with his father having to bail him out financially. On the night of Haley's murder, Isaiah had been texting his father about the money he owed while he was at the soccer field. Sadly, Isaiah's father wasn't aware of the full extent of his son's sinister plan to get the money back. Detectives discovered that Isaiah had resorted to various means to make ends meet. He had been stealing from his roommates and pawning their belongings at local shops. Eventually, his roommate kicked him out. Furthermore, Isaiah owed Haley $600, money she had lent him to cover his rent shortly before her murder. Additionally, he had forged 2 checks from her checkbook, each for $300, one of which bounced due to insufficient funds. Haley had confided in her friends about the stolen checks, even showing them an image of the check made out to Isaiah for $300 worth of groceries. Despite being understandably upset, Haley's compassionate nature led her to forgive him, and their friendship endured. Whether money was the motive that turned Isaiah from a petty thief into a cold-blooded killer on the night of April 23, 2017, remained uncertain. Ironically, the individual who had initially appeared as a concerned friend had now become the prime suspect. To gather more evidence, detectives obtained a warrant to search Isaiah's residence. He lived with his parents, who were speechless when detectives informed them that their son was a suspect in the murder of Haley. According to his parents, Isaiah had always been well-behaved, shy, kind, happy, easygoing, and eager to please. Everyone loved him. They insisted that Isaiah had been devastated by Haley's death, describing how he collapsed on the floor, consumed by grief. They also claimed they were unaware of Isaiah's financial struggles and found it unimaginable that he could resort to murder for money. However, the evidence told a different story. During the search, detectives found that Isaiah's father owned several firearms. The Hagans confirmed that a pistol was missing from their home, but couldn't explain how it had disappeared. The search continued, and detectives uncovered even more incriminating evidence. A towel that closely resembled the one found at the scene where Haley's body was discovered. The evidence seemed convincing enough for authorities to bring Isaiah in for a formal interrogation. The police had him sit down and informed him that they needed to talk, signaling that the investigation had taken a serious turn. Initially, Isaiah stuck to the same story he had told earlier. He had picked Haley up from her apartment and dropped her off near the dam where she was supposed to meet someone. He claimed he wasn't sure if this had happened on Friday or Saturday, recounting how Haley had assured him she was fine when he left. That's when detectives confronted Isaiah with the cell phone data evidence. They showed him a video illustrating the movements of both his and Haley's phones on a map of the area around the soccer complex, highlighting the timeline of events. Faced with this undeniable evidence, Isaiah's story began to change. He admitted to taking Haley to the soccer field but insisted that he left her there with all her belongings intact. Yet, even this version didn't align with the location data. Isaiah claimed that the only explanation he could think of was that Haley's phone had somehow stayed in his car. Ultimately, he admitted to having Haley's phone with him all night. He said he threw it out of his car window the following morning because he feared getting into trouble if anyone found it on him. He explained that this was why he had kept quiet earlier, apologizing and stating that he omitted the information out of fear. When asked why he was in Haley's car in the early hours of April 24th, he explained that Haley had given him cash and asked him to sell some concert tickets she had. She had also handed over her keys, including those for her car and apartment, so he could retrieve the tickets. Following her instructions, Isaiah said he went to Haley's apartment, searched her car for the tickets, and then entered her apartment, where he found them. He then specified the area where he had discarded the phone. Still, he did not confess to killing Haley, maintaining that he would never hurt her. But detectives weren't swayed by his denials, convinced they had the right man. With the evidence against Isaiah mounting, he was charged with murder, robbery, and obstruction of justice. As Isaiah became the primary suspect, the other two suspects were exonerated. Soon, he was behind bars, awaiting trial. After a mistrial in the first case, Isaiah's second trial began on May 30, 2018. The prosecutor acknowledged that the case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, but he pointed to Isaiah's lies, evident in the interrogation tapes, as damning proof of his guilt. While defense attorney conceded that Isaiah had lied about certain details, he took a different approach. He emphasized that Isaiah never confessed to the murder and that no physical evidence linked him to the crime. He even suggested an alternative suspect, arguing that the authorities should have focused more on Rice, who had since been charged with the murder of baby Jackson. The defense also noted that phone data placed Isaiah miles away from the soccer field when Haley's phone became active around 3 a.m., showing that he couldn't have been near the same cell tower as Haley. Despite this, the prosecution offered another theory. When a phone is turned back on, it reconnects to the last cell tower it was connected to before being powered off. This, they suggested, explained why it seemed like Haley's phone had been moving. Although this was just a theory, detectives remained convinced that no one else was involved besides Isaiah Hagen. Then, a key development emerged during the trial. The prosecution called Isaiah's mother to the stand, and she made a shocking revelation. She testified that while Isaiah was in custody, he had confessed to her that he killed Haley accidentally and didn't mean to murder her. The prosecutor expressed strong confidence in her testimony, asserting that he had never had more faith in someone's words than in those of a mother willing to testify against her own son. This unexpected testimony gave the prosecution a significant advantage. However, the defense wasn't ready to concede, arguing that Isaiah's mother's testimony couldn't be trusted due to her personal motivations. During cross-examination, she admitted that she believed the jury wouldn't convict Isaiah of murder if they heard him say it was an accident. The prosecution countered this by questioning whether she, as a corrections officer, would resort to such tactics to protect her son. After hearing all the evidence, the jury delivered their verdict on June 25, 2018, finding Isaiah guilty. On August 2, 2018, 23-year-old Isaiah Hagen was sentenced to 60 years in prison. While some sense of justice was achieved, the outcome was still a painful reminder of the tragedy and a void that would forever linger in the hearts of those who cherished Haley. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.